Hi, this week we're going to talk about sculpture and architecture. The main difference between the two is that architecture actually has to have a purpose. It is something that is walked on, lived in, people work in them, it's driven on. Architecture has to have purpose, where sculpture can just be for aesthetic value. In ancient Greece, however, sculpture was very important, and the people that made them were extremely important because it had religious value. A lot of times it was sculpture of their gods and goddesses and the animals that would help them into the afterlife. So because it was such an important deal during that time, they would actually have a lot of training going into the people that made these sculptures. Now, during classical Greek art, there was a heroic realism that came about. Sculptures were often attempted to reveal the human body in the same way that it actually is, and so they tried to have movement in their pieces. So action was a very big piece during this time, and you will often see like athletic kind of things. Of course, coming out of Greece, there was a lot of athletes and that sort of thing, and so they wanted to show that in their sculptures. The Roman art originally tended to idolize the emperors and their government officials. That was a really big deal for them. And then, of course, later on in Christianity, they started to see, the Virgin Mary and Jesus and the crucifix and hell and that sort of thing started to be a common theme as well. The Romanesque period from 1000 to 13th century showed really like squatty, chunky, angular kind of sculptures, and they were kind of completely different than the Gothic sculptures, which were tall, thin, and had vertical lines. So they kind of were polar opposites of each other. In Europe in the 17th century, a new artistic style was embraced called the Baroque period. And the church especially loved this style. You would find it a lot of times in cathedrals or the interiors of different churches. And the mood was different than the Renaissance. Many of these sculptures had angles in which to view them, so you could actually walk around and look at the different angles and you would see something different. They were very elaborate, and they were supposed to be a rebellion of where they had been before. In some of the music during that time, they actually say the Baroque period until the 50s and 60s when rock and roll came out, that was the most dynamic times in history where people really rebelled in their artistic crafts. One of the most notable time areas for art, obviously, is the Renaissance. The time meant a rebirth, and there was a renewed interest in art like never before. Donatello and Michelangelo are probably some of the biggest names from that time, and you'll actually be spending some time looking at the two Davids, and so we won't go into that right now, but you will be spending some time dialoguing about how, if you like them, what's the difference between the two of them, what exactly were the artists trying to portray, and all that. In the south of the Sahara comes African tribal art, mostly known for the natural carvings and materials. Most of these do not exist anymore. There are very few pieces. The 19th century is the soonest you can actually find. Because they were made out of wood, a lot of ants and termites got into them, and so they were destroyed. But when they were usually made for a purpose. They would be a mask or for like a chief or a tool or something else like a bowl or vase or something that could actually be used within their tribe. Right here in America, we have a lot of beautiful statues. One of the biggest one, the most well-known, is the Statue of Liberty. Here's a little trivia for you. Did you know that the Statue of Liberty was actually originally the color of a new penny? It was copper, and they talked about painting it, but that was turned down. They said, no, we don't want to paint it. And it took about 10 years for it to start to turn green, and another 25 years to be the color that it is now. So it really was originally a very pretty copper. Sculptures are a very beautiful art form, and a lot of times we think that a sculpture must be made out of marble or granite or something, like stone or wood or something like that. But the honest truth is sculptures can be made pretty much out of anything. I'm going to put a slideshow up for you on the forum so that you can kind of see some of the different sculptures that are out there. But just to name a few, there's some that are made out of Legos, bottles, snow, sand, paper, cardboard, glass, wire, cheese, gum, clay, and Play-Doh. So sculpture is just, and then of course we were made out of clay, God's ultimate sculpture. So there's a lot to it. There's a lot of them out there, and I look forward to discussing those with you within the forums this week. God bless.